Hello, my friends. I am so happy you are here with me today. Take a deep breath and relax. Imagine a cold day in February. Outside, the world is quiet and gray, but inside, everything is different. You see bright red hearts and beautiful pink flowers. You see boxes of sweet chocolate and small cards with kind words. This is Valentine's Day. It is a day when we tell our friends and family, "I love you." But have you ever stopped to wonder why? Why do we choose this specific day to celebrate love? Why do we send cards to people we care about? Is it just a modern holiday created by stores to sell candy? Or is there something deeper, something much older? Think about this for a moment. Every year, millions of people around the world celebrate this day. Yet, most of us do not know where it truly came from. The story of Valentine's Day is like a great mystery. It is a story that takes us back thousands of years. It is a story filled with Roman festivals, secret weddings, and brave heroes. It is a story that has changed many times over many centuries. Today, we are going to travel back in time together. We will walk through the streets of ancient Rome. We will visit the quiet cells of old prisons. We will see the beautiful courts of kings and queens. We will discover how a simple day became a global celebration of the heart. My friends, history is not just about dates and names. It is about human feelings. It is about our shared need to connect with one another. So, let us begin our journey. Let us find the roots of this day of love. Are you ready to hear the story? Let's go back, far back, to a time before the world we know today. Imagine we are in the city of Rome, 2,000 years ago. The city is made of white stone and marble. The air smells of wood smoke and the dusty earth. It is the middle of February, but the people are not thinking about soft hearts or flowers. They are preparing for a festival called Lupercalia. This was an ancient Roman celebration. It was very different from the Valentine's Day we know today. In fact, it was quite wild. The festival was held to honor the gods of nature and the founders of Rome. During Lupercalia, people wanted to celebrate fertility. Fertility is a word that means the ability to create new life. They wanted their crops to grow and their families to have healthy babies. It was a time of energy and movement. The Roman priests would gather at a sacred cave. They would perform rituals that seem very strange to us now. They believed these rituals would protect the city and make the land rich. After the rituals, the young men would run through the streets. They would carry small pieces of leather. They would gently tap women with these leather strips. Why did they do this? They believed it would help the women have children in the coming year. It was a day of hope for the future. There is also a legend about a lottery. Some stories say that young men would pick a woman's name from a jar. These two people would be a pair for the rest of the festival. Sometimes they even fell in love and got married later. Think about that. Even in this wild, ancient festival, we see the beginning of something. We see people coming together in pairs. We see a celebration happening in the middle of February. It was a time to welcome the spring and the return of life. It was not romantic in the way we think of romance today, but the seed was planted. The idea of pairing and new beginnings was already there. But how did this wild Roman festival change? How did it become a day named after a saint? To find that answer, we must look at the stories of the men named Valentine. Who was the real Saint Valentine? This is a difficult question, because history tells us about several men with this name. All of them lived a long time ago. All of them were brave, and they all became symbols of love and faith. The most famous story is about a priest named Valentine who lived in Rome. At that time, the emperor was a man named Claudius II. Claudius was a hard man. He wanted a very large and strong army for his wars. The emperor believed that single men made better soldiers. He thought that if a man had a wife and children, he would be afraid to die in battle. So, the emperor made a very strict law. He said that young men were not allowed to get married. Can you imagine that? To be told you cannot marry the person you love? But Valentine believed in the power of love. He thought the emperor's law was wrong and unfair. In the shadows of the night, Valentine performed secret weddings. He brought young couples together in front of God. He gave them hope and a future. But secret stories do not stay secret forever. Eventually, the emperor found out what Valentine was doing. Valentine was arrested and thrown into a dark prison. Another legend says that while Valentine was in prison, he met the jailer's daughter. The young girl was blind. Valentine was a man of great faith and kindness. It is said that through his prayers, he healed her and gave her sight back. Before he was executed, he wrote her a final note. He signed it, "From your Valentine." Have you heard that phrase before? We still use it today on our cards. It was a message of friendship and goodbye. Whether these stories are completely true or just legends, they matter. They show us a man who is willing to die for love. They show us a man who believed that human connection is more important than cruel laws. Valentine became a hero. He became a martyr, which is a person who dies for what they believe in. Because of his sacrifice, his name began to stand for something beautiful. As time moved forward, the world began to change. The Roman Empire became less powerful. Christianity began to grow and spread across Europe. The leaders of the early Christian church had a difficult task. They wanted people to follow the new religion, but they knew that people loved their old traditions. The people still wanted to celebrate their ancient festivals, like Lupercalia. So, the church did something very smart. They decided to give the old festivals a new meaning. They took the dates of pagan holidays and turned them into Christian holidays. Pagan is a word for the old religions that worshipped many gods of nature. In the year 496, a man named Pope Gelasius made a big decision. He wanted to stop the wild rituals of Lupercalia. He declared that February 14th would be Saint Valentine's Day. He wanted the people to focus on the saint instead of the old Roman gods. But at first, the day was very serious. It was a day to honor the memory of the martyr, Saint Valentine. It was a day for prayer and going to church. It was not yet a day for flowers, chocolate, or romantic dates. Think about how history moves in small steps. The date was set, and the name was chosen. The old ideas of pairing from Lupercalia were still in people's memories, but now they were connected to a Christian hero of love. For several hundred years, February 14th remained a quiet religious day. It was a time to reflect on sacrifice and faith. But the human heart always looks for joy. People still felt the coming of spring in the middle of February. They still felt the desire to express their feelings for one another. They were just waiting for the right moment for romance to bloom. It would take a few more centuries and some famous poets to change the day again. Isn't it interesting how a holiday can be built like a house, one piece at a time, layer by layer? First, we had the ancient festival. Then, we had the name of the saint. Now, we are ready for the magic of romance to enter the story. Now let's travel to the Middle Ages. This was the time of brave knights, tall castles, and beautiful ladies. During this era, a new idea began to grow in Europe. People called it courtly love. This was a very polite and poetic kind of love. It was about showing respect and giving beautiful gifts. It was about singing songs and writing poems for someone special. During this time, the idea of Valentine's Day changed again. A famous English poet named Geoffrey Chaucer played a big role in this change. In one of his poems, He wrote about how birds choose their mates on Saint Valentine's Day. He suggested that nature itself celebrates love in mid-February. Imagine the people of that time reading his words. They looked outside and saw the birds starting to build nests. They felt the air getting warmer. They began to think, if the birds are choosing their partners, perhaps we should too. This was a very romantic idea. It linked the religious day of the saint with the natural beauty of love. Soon, other poets and writers began to follow Chaucer's example. They wrote stories about love and adventure happening on February 14th. Valentine's Day started to become a social event. In the courts of kings and queens, people played games to find a Valentine. They would draw names from a hat, just like in the old Roman stories. The person whose name you drew would be your Valentine for the year. You would treat them with extra kindness. You might write them a small poem or give them a simple flower. It was a way to make life more beautiful and exciting. Think about the power of words. A poet wrote a few lines about birds, and it changed how the whole world looked at a day. It turned a serious religious day into a celebration of romance. By the end of the Middle Ages, Valentine's Day was firmly connected to the heart. People began to see love as something magical and worth celebrating. But how did they share these feelings if they were far apart? They didn't have phones or the internet. They had something much more personal: the written word. This was the beginning of the tradition of Valentine's cards. My friends, imagine you have a secret feeling for someone. You want to tell them, but you are too shy to say it out loud. What would you do? Hundreds of years ago, people began to use paper to share their hearts. The oldest known Valentine poem still exists today. It was written in 1415 by a man named Charles, the Duke of Orleans. He was a prisoner in the Tower of London after a big battle. He was lonely and missed his wife very much. He wrote her a letter filled with love and called her his sweet Valentine. He was using the name of the saint to express his own deep feelings. His letter was a whisper on paper. It was a way for his heart to travel across the prison walls. By the 1700s, sending small notes became very popular in England and America. These were not the cards you buy in a store today. These were handmade. People would spend hours carefully cutting paper and drawing small pictures. They would write poems in their best handwriting. Sometimes they would even hide a secret message inside a puzzle. These early Valentines were very precious. They were symbols of the time and effort someone spent just for you. There were even books called Valentine writers. These books helped people who didn't know how to write poetry. You could look inside and find a beautiful verse to copy onto your paper. It was like a cheat sheet for love. Think about the feeling of receiving a letter like that. You would hold it in your hands and know that someone was thinking of you. You would smell the ink and feel the texture of the paper. It was a very intimate and personal experience. As the years went by, more and more people wanted to send these notes, but making them by hand took a long time. The world was about to change again. A big revolution was coming, the Industrial Revolution. This change would take these quiet whispers on paper and share them with the whole world. It was the birth of the modern Valentine's Day industry. But before that, love was still a quiet, handwritten secret. In the 1800s, the world started to move faster. This was the Victorian era. Factories were being built, and machines were making things more quickly than ever before. This changed Valentine's Day forever. In the past, cards were handmade and expensive. Only wealthy people could afford the time and materials to send them. But with new printing machines, cards could be made in large numbers. They became cheaper and easier to find. In America, a young woman named Esther Howland had a brilliant idea. She saw a beautiful, expensive card from England. She thought, I can make something even better and sell it to many people. She started a business in her home. She hired her friends to help her. They used beautiful lace, colorful pictures, and shiny gold paper. People called her the mother of the American Valentine. Her cards were works of art. At the same time, the postal service was becoming better and cheaper. In England, the penny post was started. This meant you could send a letter anywhere in the country for just 1 penny. Suddenly, everyone could send a Valentine. Millions of cards were moving through the mail. The postman even had to ask for extra help on February 14th because there were so many letters. Think about how exciting this was for people. For the first time, a worker in a factory or a servant in a house could send a beautiful card. They could participate in the tradition of romance. The Victorian people loved these cards. They were often very fancy and sentimental. They had pictures of small angels called Cupids, blooming roses, and golden hearts. Cupid is the ancient god of desire who shoots arrows to make people fall in love. But this was also the beginning of commercialization. This is a big word that means making a holiday into a business. Some people missed the old, handmade notes. They felt the machines were taking away the personal touch. However, the trend could not be stopped. Valentine's Day was no longer just a small tradition for poets and kings. It was a holiday for everyone. It was a global celebration that was only going to get bigger as we entered the modern age. As we move into the 20th and 21st centuries, Valentine's Day has become one of the biggest holidays in the world. It is not just about cards anymore. Now we have chocolate, jewelry, and expensive dinners. Large companies realized that people are very happy to spend money on those they love. In the 1900s, candy companies began making heart-shaped boxes for chocolate. Florists began growing millions of red roses just for this one day. But Valentine's Day also began to travel to different cultures. In many countries, the holiday took on new and interesting shapes. In Japan, for example, it is usually the women who give chocolates to men on February 14th. Then, 1 month later, on White Day, the men give gifts back to the women. In South Korea, there is even a Black Day in April. This is for people who are single and didn't get any gifts. They go out and eat black noodles together. In recent years, the holiday has changed again. We now have Galentine's Day. This is a day for women to celebrate their female friends. It shows that love is not just about romance. It is about friendship, family, and kindness. Think about your own life. Do you send a text message or a digital card on Valentine's Day? Technology has changed how we communicate, but the message is the same. We still want to say, "You are important to me." Some people criticize the holiday today. They say it is too commercial. They say it makes people feel lonely if they don't have a partner. These are important points to think about. But if we look past the expensive gifts, the heart of the holiday is still there. It is a day that stops our busy lives for a moment. It reminds us to be grateful for the people who walk beside us in life. Valentine's Day has traveled from ancient Rome through the pens of poets and into our modern smartphones. It has survived for thousands of years. It has changed its face many times, but its spirit remains. Now we must ask ourselves, why does it last? We have reached the end of our journey through time. We have seen wild Roman festivals and secret weddings. We have seen beautiful handmade lace and modern boxes of chocolate. The history of Valentine's Day is a long and winding road. It is a mix of religion, myth, poetry, and business. But why do we still celebrate it after all this time? Why do we care about a priest from 2,000 years ago? I believe the answer is very simple. It is because the human heart does not change. We all have a deep need to be seen. We all have a deep need to be loved. Life can be very difficult and very lonely sometimes. Valentine's Day gives us a reason to reach out, It gives us a permission to be emotional. It is a small light in the middle of the dark winter. It reminds us that love is the most important thing we have. Think about this. Love is a language that everyone speaks. It doesn't matter if you are in New York, Tokyo, or London. We all understand the feeling of a beating heart. We all understand the joy of a kind word. Whether you have a romantic partner or not, this day is for you. It is a day to love yourself. It is a day to call your parents or your best friend. It is a day to remember that you are part of a long history of human connection. So the next time you see a red heart in a shop window, don't just think about the candy. Think about the brave priest Valentine. Think about the birds choosing their mates in the trees. Think about the Duke writing letters from his prison cell. You are now part of that story too. Every time you show kindness, you are keeping the spirit of the holiday alive. Love is not just a day on the calendar. Love is a choice we make every single day. Thank you for joining me on this journey, my friends. I hope you found beauty in this story. I hope it makes your February 14th a little more special. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and most importantly, keep loving. Goodbye for now.